So, to be entirely honest, I wasn't planning on uploading today, but then I remembered, oh crap, I promised a Furuta video. So, yeah, that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Kichimura Washuu, or Nimura Furuta, Sota, like whatever you want to call him. Furuta goes by a lot of different names. And yeah, so before we hop into that, one thing I do want to say is, spoiler warning, if you have only seen the anime, obviously the Tokyo Ghoul anime ends off with showcasing that there is something going on with Furuta. I do not want to really spoil you about some things that might end up being shown during the event of the next season of Tokyo Ghoul the anime. Or if you're not caught up to the manga, this will go from Furuta all the way up until the point where we find out the reveal that he is part of the Washuu clan, all the way up to the point of the end of the story and his conclusion as a character. So yeah, let's kind of hop immediately into this video. So, in my personal opinion, I would definitely say that Furuta is by far one of the most intriguing antagonists throughout the course of a lot of different manga I have read in my life. Now, I'm not going to say that he is the most interesting or anything like that, because I feel like when it comes to, interest, that's very subjective, and in my personal opinion, I would throw Furuta up there with some of the best written villains in, anime and manga. Now, there are some things about Furuta that I feel like the fandom, as well as several different people, do not really understand, and there are some things that I'm going to point out, as well as there are things that we clearly do not know. There are some things that have been hinted at, but not fully expressed when it comes to the character of Furuta, which is a little bit unfortunate due to Suishida's urgency to wanting to end the Tokyo Ghoul story. But I digress. Let's go into Furuta's character immediately. So, Furuta, like I said before, is probably one of the most interesting characters I've read when it comes to manga, because throughout the course of the Tokyo Ghoul story, as each chapter came out, you always were kind of wondering in the back of your head, what exactly does Furuta have planned, and how is he going to execute it? Furuta, every single time he showed up on screen, always had something very intriguing to say, whether it's him being very trollish, or him being very blunt about something. And it's to the point where Furuta, as he's being introduced as Furuta Washuu, or being known as Sota the Clown, we find out more and more things about him, and we realize that he's actually playing every single side in the Tokyo Ghoul verse. He was part of the clowns, he represented the ghouls, he represented the half-humans, he represented the humans. You have where he was part of CCG, he was part of, I think he was also part of Aogiri for a very short period of time as a member of the clowns, and you have where all these separate things are going on regarding Furuta, where it makes you really wonder who exactly is he allied with, and when you get to the very end of the story, you get the reveal that Furuta was only allied with himself. And I think that's very interesting, especially when it comes to his overall goals on what exactly he wanted to do within the Tokyo Ghoul story, that even though on the surface does seem really bad, he does have some type of inner depth where there is good in him, and he is trying to kind of create some form of peace within the world, at least when it comes to the aspect of Tokyo, which I do find very interesting. And it's very unfortunate that we didn't really get the full-on characterization of Furuta and find out everything about his motives, but like other Tokyo Ghoul characters such as Arima, leaving them mysterious might actually be a good thing. Now, one thing I do want to bring up in regards to Furuta, like I said before, Furuta kind of seems to play up a facade when it comes to the aspect of being around several different people or several different groups of people. You see this throughout the story. You see this in the case of CCG, where he acts a lot more dominant and more leader-like, whereas in comparison to the way how he was around some of the clowns, which we haven't seen a whole lot of interactions between the way how Furuta acts around the clowns, except for, I believe, one moment with Uta, if I'm not mistaken, where he's a lot more clowny, which is kind of ironic. I wasn't trying to make that pun, but he's a lot more jokeful, and he doesn't really take everything seriously. But that has been very prevalent when it comes to Furuta's character as well. But there are scenes, for example, when he is talking to Kaneki, where you see his personality shift quite a few times throughout the course of the story. Now, this can either be due to two different things. Either A, Furuta is bipolar, which is very well possible, or it could be the case that Furuta actually is just very good at being an actor, which is also very possible, because Furuta has even brought this up himself within the manga, that he is an actor and he will play the part that he needs to do, and you even have where he has references to this, like when he explains the whole entire plot of being Dragon, and how he wants humanity and, ghouls to come together in order to take out this giant beast. He doesn't call it Dragon, obviously, at the time, and he's like, script, written, and directed by Nimura Furuta, and it's kind of like, yeah, you can tell that he's joking around in that scene. That actually is something that did end up coming to fruition, which really did screw over Kaneki as well as the CCG and his group GOAT. So, yeah, there's a lot to Furuta that is actually very odd. But one thing that I will say when it comes to Furuta that I do personally believe, for the most part, is always considered true, and that is his interactions with Rize, or when he speaks about Rize. For the most part, everything that Furuta has said about Rize, whether it is towards her odd body that we see at the end of the Tokyo Ghoul story, or when he talks to Kaneki about her or other people about her, he always kind of has this very odd vibe to him, where he seems very joyful and very happy, and in some ways even kind of showcases some aspects of remorse. Because we get the reveal at the end of the story, very early on in Furuta's life, apparently Furuta had a very different personality. Even though he was shown to be a prodigy, which has been made note by characters like Kaiko, like Arima, who has said that Furuta at a very young age has very good form, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal on the surface, but when you actually think about Arima's personality and everything he has said to every other person, for the most part, Arima doesn't really compliment people very often. The only times I can think of him actually complimenting someone is complimenting Amon for getting a promotion after the events of the Aogiri arc, and also complimenting Furuta when he was very young. Besides that, he usually has something to say, like you are point blah 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 seconds off, which he has said to Heise Sasaki or Kaneki, whatever you want to call him, and also what he said to Hirako during the event of the Yomo flashback. So Arima doesn't praise people very often, so when you do get praised by him, you best believe that is definitely an honor. So yeah, now going back to what I was saying regarding Furuta when he was young, you have where even though he was considered a prodigy by a lot of different people within the Washuu family, Furuta has been stated by people that he seems a lot more feminine. At least he acted a lot more feminine and a lot more childish in his younger years, and he seemed like he would be way more likely to play with dolls than actually pick up a sword and go fight someone. And this is something that I believe was very true and very honest to Furuta. It's not like he was like this hidden, really powerful dude, at least at that point in time in his life. He was definitely skilled, but I don't think he was actually trying to purposely hide it. I feel like when it came to when he actually looked at the Washuu bloodline and the fact that they died very young, and looking at the way how the world has changed and how messed up it truly is, I feel like that's what caused the main shift in Furuta, as well as looking at the aspect of how Rize viewed the world at that point in time, and the fact that she so desperately wanted to escape, and he was in love with her, despite her technically being his half-sister, which is really gross because it's incest, but whatever. The Washuu family interbreeds. I guess that's just something you have to deal with when it comes to the Tokyo Ghoul world, which isn't really that new because the Tsukiyama family we knew apparently did that for a while too. I don't think they do it in the recent years, but they used to do that. But yeah, it's pretty gross. But besides that, going on, Furuta really did want to create peace in the end, and you kind of do get small glimpses of this, even though it isn't stated outright. You have where this is stated by Furuta himself, where he said that even though, him as well as several other members of the Washuu clan typically die off very young, before the age of 30 or around that time. Obviously, we know that characters like Arima has seemed to prolong that age a little bit, not by a whole lot, and somehow Kaiko, okay, I can make a separate video talking about this, but let me talk about this real quick. I don't know how the hell Kaiko's still alive. We know that he's a full-blooded member of the Washuu clan because he's one of the kids of Tsuneyoshi Washuu. Kaiko was an adult in the Furuta flashback, and he was sure enough a grown-ass man during the events of the Eto flashback when Eto was an infant. Eto, from what I recall, is in her mid to late 20s. Kaiko should be well above 30, so I don't know how the hell he's still alive, but I digress. Let's move on. All right, I can make a separate video talking about that. If you guys have any idea how the hell this man's still alive, just comment down below. I would love to know. But continuing on, I do feel like that after Furuta realizing how long he actually had left, when you have that very odd scene when he's kind of smiling as a little kid and he's talking to his father and his father's kind of explaining some of this stuff to him, he's like, all right, then I guess I have to accomplish everything I want with the time I have left. And I feel like from that point forward, even though we do not see it, that's where Furuta kind of went on his whole entire path of wanting to create some type of peace within the world, even if it meant painting himself as the villain in order to do so. Kind of giving him somewhat of a role very similar to, I guess, Lelouch from Code Geass. Obviously, if you saw the ending of Code Geass, you know what Lelouch did in order to kind of create this quote-unquote peace within their world, and I feel like Furuta did something very similar, especially when it comes to the regards of having Kaneki come across as this giant monster that humanity, ghouls, and all these different groups who originally hated one another came together in order to fight against, and he painted himself as this villain for, I guess, humanity to stop, and you even have where Kaneki did end up playing into his plan, even though Kaneki did kind of say to Furuta that, like, look, even though you think this world is wrong, it's just, like, that's just the way how it is, and there isn't really anything that we have to do about that besides try to preserve the peace that has been created. And I'm going to be one of the leaders in order to make sure that that does happen. And Kaneki did successfully do that, at least for the most part. You have where, like, the Peace Corps was made with the TSC, and you have where several different investigators as well as some ghouls joined part of that and is helping keep peace within Tokyo. We've seen Tsukiyama's been doing this, Urei, Yusa, Kaneki himself, and several other people. You can assume probably Toka and Yoma are helping as well, at least Toka before she got pregnant again, which, by the way, Suishida did confirm that she is pregnant and most likely is going to have a son, so yes, I'm excited, but we're never going to see that, unfortunately. But besides that, continuing on, like what I was saying before, Furuta is very interesting to me, and the fact that he actually did want to create peace by the very end, even though he did kind of take a really screwed up way in doing so, I do feel like does kind of showcase Furuta in some ways is somewhat of not your stereotypical villain where he just wants to destroy the world for destroying it. Like several other characters in the story, he did want to create peace, even though he did take a different path within doing so, like Eto or Arima or even Kaneki. So I do kind of like that aspect of it, because one thing that I've always kind of said, a character, a good villain is or a good antagonist is someone who can go against the protagonist and have strong enough morals that you can either agree with or can kind of stand on the opposite side of the protagonists, and I feel like Furuta really did do so, even though we didn't get to learn everything about him. And in some regards, I will definitely admit, Furuta is not a perfect character, because I do feel like that there's some aspects that either I don't necessarily agree with, or I feel like could have been better explained. I still do think Furuta is by far one of the better developed characters within the Tokyo Ghoul story. Probably not on the higher echelon of it, but he's definitely within the top 10. And another thing that I do want to bring up regarding Furuta, at least when it comes to the aspect of his overall personality, just because Furuta did want to create peace, I don't want people to kind of come across, kind of misconstrued my words and make me sound like I'm trying to say that Furuta is actually a good guy, because he's not. Furuta has been showcased multiple times throughout the course of the story that he does enjoy killing innocent people, as well as killing people who might be fighting on the side of good, as well as other characters in the story. We've seen Takizawa do this, we've seen Eto do this. I know a lot of people like to paint Eto in a very good light, but in reality, Eto is a pretty horrible person, if we're being real. And it's just kind of one thing that we have to kind of just look at is, this is the way how Tokyo Ghoul is. Hardly any people within the Tokyo Ghoul story are innocent. A lot of different people within Tokyo Ghoul have taken innocent lives, even if they didn't really want to, like we've seen with Kaneki. And we all, most people sympathize with Kaneki. Kaneki is a pretty sympathizable guy, and we know that he didn't really want to do that, but he still did end up doing it. And But one thing I do want to say is, even though Furuta does put on this facade, this mask on his face, it isn't always there. Like I said, with the whole entire thing regarding Rize, I feel like most of the time his mask was no longer on. And I do feel like during a whole entire scene, when you see the destruction of Tokyo, and then Ui and Furuta are just kind of sitting there talking amongst one another, when Ui asks Furuta, like, what was all this for? In reality, like, you're just a madman, like, you're crazy. You created all of this freaking destruction and travesty, and now the world's in a even more messed up position than it was before. How could you do this? When Furuta says that he's sorry, he actually does look genuine. And that's one thing about Furuta that really did kind of hit the nail in the coffin of why he's probably my second favorite character within the Tokyo Ghoul story. So I don't really want to continue on for too long because I feel like I'm going to probably end up repeating myself. And there are some aspects of Furuta I didn't really go into too much depth when it comes to this video. I'll probably make a separate video talking about the whole entire Furuta relationship with Kaneki and also Furuta's relationship with Rize. But for now, that's kind of all for this video, guys. So thank you for watching. My comment, subscribe as always, guys. I love you all. General Hawk, signing out. See you guys.